Welcome to the deep dive. Let's plug into something that's woven itself deeply into the fabric of our everyday lives, often so seamlessly we barely notice.
Hmm.
Think about your smart thermostat adjusting the temperature before you get home, your watch tracking your steps and sleep, maybe the camera on your porch showing you who's at the door.
Right? Or even the systems in your car.
Exactly. Feeding you traffic updates, managing engine performance. This is the Internet of Things, or IoT. And it's not just some futuristic idea anymore. It's here, it's pervasive. And well, while it brings incredible convenience, it also opens up some seriously important questions.
That's absolutely right. The explosion of connected devices is transforming everything: our homes, cities, industries, healthcare, you name it.
It's everywhere.
But as this network expands and these devices get smarter, collecting richer and more personal data, the ethical landscape it gets increasingly complex.
Right.
We're talking specifically about those core issues: data privacy and user consent in this hyper-connected world. It's a critical conversation, not just for the folks building these things, but really for anyone who uses them.
Absolutely. And that's precisely why we're taking a deep dive today into some source material that grapples directly with these challenges. It's research titled The Ethics of IoT, Balancing Innovation and Privacy.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Our mission here is to cut through the noise, unpack the essential insights from this material, and really understand the core ethical tightropes that developers and technical managers in the IoT space are walking.
hmm
We want to see how the source suggests they can approach privacy and consent responsibly, looking at frameworks, best practices, maybe some practical examples. This topic feels incredibly timely and relevant. I mean, it touches almost all of us.
It couldn't be more relevant. The material we looked at, it paints a really clear picture of where we are, a world defined by connectivity, with billions of devices already online. Billions. And that number is just growing exponentially. This isn't just about adding features. It's about managing an unprecedented flow of data.
Right.
And understanding the ethical dimension, as the research really emphasizes, it isn't optional anymore. It's fundamental to building tech that people can actually trust and rely on for the long haul. It's about making sure that the drive for innovation doesn't unintentionally, or maybe sometimes intentionally, compromise individual rights and privacy.
Okay, let's jump into unpacking the source material then. It really starts by grounding us in the current reality of IoT and immediately raises those ethical considerations. It highlights the rapid evolution and just the sheer prevalence of this technology in our daily lives. It's moved way beyond the early adopters, hasn't it? Smart devices are becoming totally commonplace.
Oh, completely. And the scale is what makes the ethical stakes so incredibly high. The material really stresses this point. We're talking billions of devices connected right now.
Billions, yeah. It's hard to even picture.
Imagine each one of those devices potentially collecting information, sensor data, location, usage patterns, maybe audio, video.
Wow.
The volume of data this generates is truly staggering. It's not just a bigger data set. It's qualitatively different because of how personal and granular that data can be. And this scale, as the source rightly points out, directly gives rise to significant challenges and risks, particularly around privacy.
Right. The magnitude of data collection isn't just some engineering feat. It's a potential privacy minefield if it's not handled carefully.
Yeah.
So what are some of the most common data privacy concerns that the source flags? You know, those typical worries users might have when they think about their connected devices.
Well, the research lays out concerns that are unfortunately becoming all too familiar. Top of the list are things like unauthorized access to the data these devices collect,
Okay.
the risk of large-scale data breaches, and, of course, the potential for unintended surveillance.
Yeah, the surveillance one always gets me.
Think about it. A smart camera could potentially offer a window right into your home. A fitness tracker holds intimate details about your health, your activity. A connected car knows where you go, how you drive. If unauthorized individuals get access to this stuff, the consequences can range from identity theft and financial fraud right through to physical security risks if they figure out your routines or vulnerabilities.
Scary stuff.
And a large-scale breach from just one single vendor could expose millions of users' deeply personal information. Then there's the worry about surveillance. Could that smart speaker be recording conversations when you don't realize it?
Right.
Could aggregated data about your movements be used to infer sensitive stuff about you?
Right.
These aren't just hypothetical fears.
Yeah.
They are real risks inherent in the current IoT landscape if those ethical safeguards aren't robust.
And the research makes a crucial link between these risks and consumer trust, doesn't it? It really underlines how foundational consumer trust is to the success, the growth of individual IoT products and, well, the whole market. Why is trust so absolutely critical here? What happens when that trust gets damaged or breaks down?
Trust is paramount because, unlike a lot of other technologies, IoT devices are often embedded in the most private, the most intimate spaces of our lives, our homes, our bodies, our cars.
Yeah, literally on us or around us all the time.
Exactly. Users are making a leap of faith, really, trusting companies with data they wouldn't just casually share.
Hmm.
If that trust gets violated, maybe through a breach or some perceived misuse of data, it's incredibly difficult, sometimes impossible to rebuild.
Mm-hmm.
Material we reviewed suggests that when trust erodes, users just disengage. They stop buying new devices. They might even disconnect the ones they already own. And this stifles market growth. It stifles innovation because the very foundation of user adoption is cracked. It's really not an exaggeration to say the long-term viability of the whole IoT market is directly tied to its ability to earn and keep user trust through, demonstrably ethical practices.
And one big scandal can hurt everyone.
Exactly. A major privacy issue involving one type of device can easily cast a shadow over the entire industry.
So pulling this back to you, the listener, why does this scale and these risks matter so much? You probably have something connected around you, a smart TV, maybe a security system, even smart appliances these days.
Because you are part of those billions of connected devices, the data risks we're discussing, they aren't happening to some abstract group of people out there. They apply to the data generated by your devices about your life. Understanding the potential vulnerabilities, the privacy implications. That's really the first step towards being a more informed user and, frankly, a more demanding consumer. You have a right to know how your data is being handled, and these discussions help illustrate why that matters and what the potential downsides are if companies aren't careful. It empowers you, to ask better questions or make more informed buying decisions.
It feels like there's this constant race, doesn't it, between the incredibly fast pace of tech development in IoT, the next sensor, the next feature, the smaller device, and then the slower, more deliberate pace at which we as a society and the companies themselves can fully grasp and address the ethical implications. Why does ethics often feel like it's, I don't know, trying to catch a bullet train in a horse-drawn carriage?
That's a perfect analogy,
What?
actually. And the research touches on this dynamic. Technology innovation is driven by what's technically possible. Can we make this device do X, or can we connect Y to Z?
Right, the can we?
Exactly. It moves incredibly fast because engineers, designers, they're constantly pushing boundaries. Ethical consideration, though, it requires stepping back. It demands reflection on the impact of that technology on individuals, on society.
Takes time.
It often involves grappling with unforeseen consequences that only really become apparent after a technology is widely deployed.
Yeah.
Establishing norms, developing standards, building consensus around ethical guidelines. It just takes more time than writing code or designing hardware.
Hmm.
And this is precisely why being proactive about ethics, thinking ahead about potential harms before they occur, is so critical in a field like IoT. Waiting until there's a major incident, that's just too late.
And that proactive approach, or the need for it, leads directly into the next key area the source material explores, the regulatory landscape. It argues that understanding the legal environment isn't just for the legal team, it's absolutely crucial for both the developers building the tech and the technical managers overseeing it all.
Absolutely crucial.
It shapes product design and user interaction in really tangible ways.
Completely. Regulations aren't just like external constraints anymore. They are increasingly becoming fundamental design requirements. For a developer, knowing about data protection laws means understanding that certain types of data need specific handling or that consent mechanisms have to meet particular standards.
Right.
This influences everything from the database architecture to the design of the user interface for privacy settings. For technical managers, it's about ensuring the whole team knows these obligations, the development processes incorporate compliance checks, and that the deployed systems meet legal requirements for data handling, security, user rights management. All of it.
So ignoring regulations is just not smart.
Not an option, really. And integrating them early is far, far more efficient than trying to patch things later on.
And the research specifically calls out GDPR and CCPA as prime examples of data privacy regulations highly relevant to IoT. Can you briefly explain why these two are so significant in this space?
Sure. GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation in the EU, and CCPA, the California Consumer Privacy Act in the US. They were really landmark regulations. They significantly raised the bar for data privacy globally.
Mm,
GDPR, for instance, brought in stringent requirements for getting explicit informed consent. It gave individuals strong rights over their data, like the right to access it, correct it, erase it.
hmm
It mandated specific data protection impact assessments and introduced that key concept of data protection by design and by default.
Okay. And CCPA.
CCPA gave California residents similar rights, the right to know what data is being collected, the right to ask for deletion, the right to opt out of their personal information being sold.
Right.
So for any IoT company operating in these markets or even just handling data from residents of these areas, complying with these laws is non-negotiable. They directly impact how data is collected by sensors, how it's processed locally or in the cloud, how it's stored, how long it's kept, and crucially, how users are informed and control the whole process.
And the source mentions these are just examples, right? There are others popping up globally.
Exactly. While the source highlights these too, it's vital to remember the global regulatory landscape is changing fast. Many countries are implementing their own comprehensive data privacy laws that IoT companies absolutely have to navigate.
And the implications of failing to comply with these regulations are quite severe, aren't they? The source highlights hefty financial penalties, significant reputational damage.
Massive loss of user trust too.
Yeah.
The consequences are indeed substantial. GDPR, for example, can impose fines up to 4% of a company's global annual revenue.
Wow, 4% global, that could be billions.
Billions for large tech companies, yeah. CCPA also has significant penalties. But beyond the direct financial hit, the damage to a company's reputation from a public privacy violation or a breach can be long-lasting, even devastating. Users lose trust, competitors gain an edge, negative publicity can severely impact future sales, partnerships, legal challenges from regulators, consumer groups, affected individuals. They can also lead to really protracted and costly litigation. It's a clear case where cutting corners on compliance can end up costing way, way more down the road.
But here's where the material presents a really interesting perspective, something that might seem a bit counterintuitive at first. It suggests that regulations can actually inspire ethical innovation. How can legal requirements, which often feel like limitations, push companies to be more creative in protecting users?
Yeah, this is a great point, and it shifts the perspective away from just seeing regulation as a burden. When faced with strict requirements, like privacy by design or the need to minimize data collection, engineering and design teams are challenged, right? They have to find novel solutions.
Okay.
Instead of just building the easiest path, like collect everything, process it all in the cloud, they're forced to ask, how can we achieve this feature while collecting less data? Can we process sensitive information on the device itself without sending it over the network? How do we implement robust security from the ground up, not just as an add-on?
So the constraint forces creativity.
Exactly. These constraints, paradoxically, can foster a deeper level of creativity and lead to more sophisticated, secure, and privacy-preserving technologies. It shifts the focus from just functionality to responsible functionality.
Like designing within weight limits for a plane or something?
Precisely. Think of engineering challenges in other fields, designing within weight limits, energy constraints, that can lead to groundbreaking materials or designs. Privacy regulations can act as similar catalysts for innovation in data handling and system architecture.
So for the listener, how do these regulations ultimately impact you as someone using IoT devices every day?
Well, fundamentally, they establish your rights regarding the data those devices collect about you. They're the legal basis for demanding transparency from companies, for having the ability to access or delete your data, for opting out of certain types of data processing. Now, while not every company is perfectly compliant, these laws provide leverage. Knowing that GDPR or CCPA exists, for instance, empowers you to look for companies that respect these principles and gives you recourse if they don't. They are designed, maybe imperfectly, but designed to give you more control and visibility over your digital footprint from these connected devices.
It does feel like regulators are often playing catch-up, though. The tech moves so incredibly fast. Is it truly possible for legislation to keep pace with the dizzying speed of IoT innovation?
That's one of the central challenges in this whole space. And the material definitely implies this tension. Legislative processes are just inherently slower, more deliberate than the pace of tech development. And this gap is exactly why the research emphasizes the proactive responsibility of developers and managers. They can't just sit around waiting for a law to be passed to address a potential ethical issue. They need to anticipate future implications, build flexible systems, and adopt ethical principles as core engineering requirements.
So the law is the floor, not the ceiling.
Exactly. Regulatory frameworks provide a necessary foundation, a boundary, but truly ethical IoT requires industry players to take initiative and go beyond those minimum legal requirements.
Going beyond compliance brings us right to the heart of ethical design principles, which the source material digs into next. This concept of designing with privacy in mind from the absolute earliest stages of development, not as an afterthought.
Yeah, this is the principle known as privacy by design, or PBD. The core idea, as the material articulates it, is that privacy isn't something you try to, patch onto a product or service once it's built.
Right.
It has to be integrated into the fundamental architecture, the design, the operation, right from the very beginning. It's about baking privacy into the core functionality, just like you'd bake in security or usability. It means privacy considerations influence the initial concept, the choice of hardware, software components, the network architecture, data storage strategy, the user interface, everything.
Okay, so if privacy by design isn't just the checklist you run through at the end, what are the actual principles behind it? What does making privacy foundational from the start truly look like in a practical sense when you're building a device or a service?
Well, while the source doesn't explicitly list out, say, the classic 7 principles of PBD, the idea it conveys aligns perfectly. It means designing systems that, first, proactively prevent privacy issues, anticipate and prevent pitfalls before they happen, don't just react to breaches.
Okay, proactive.
Second, be privacy-friendly by default. The default setting should always be the most private. Users shouldn't have to hunt through menus to protect their data. Privacy should be the automatic baseline.
That makes sense.
Third, embed privacy into the design. It should be an integral component of the system architecture, not some add-on module. Fourth, maintain full functionality. Privacy by design should enhance, not detract from, the usability. Show you can have both.
Good point.
Fifth, ensure end-to-end security. Protecting privacy needs robust security throughout the data's entire life cycle, collection to deletion. Sixth, maintain visibility and transparency. Keep data practices open and clear to users and providers. And seventh, respect user privacy. Keep user interests paramount, offer strong defaults, proper notice, and empower users with control.
So in practice, or IoT, what kinds of questions are developers asking?
They're constantly asking things like, what's the absolute minimum data we need to deliver this specific feature? Can this processing happen locally, right on the device, instead of sending data to the cloud? Is the data encrypted by default both when it's moving and when it's stored? Are the privacy controls clearly presented to the user during setup and easy to find later?
That makes sense. So thinking about actual IoT products, what are some concrete examples of features developers can build in that would demonstrate this privacy by design approach based on the discussion points in the source?
Good examples really illustrate those principles.
Right.
Take a smart home security camera. True privacy by design might mean the motion detection and basic object recognition, like person detected, happens entirely on the device using an embedded chip.
Not in the cloud.
Right. Not streaming all video constantly to the cloud for analysis. Raw video only gets sent to the user's phone when an actual alert is triggered. That reduces continuous data transmission and cloud storage of potentially sensitive footage.
Okay, what about like a fitness tracker?
For a wearable fitness tracker, it could mean health data is processed locally on the watch itself to calculate metrics, calories burned, sleep quality, whatever. And maybe only aggregated or summarized data gets sent to the phone app, or synced with the cloud only when it's necessary and the user specifically opts in. Defaulting to strong encryption for all communications, both within the home network and out to the cloud, that's another fundamental example. Providing users with a clear, intuitive dashboard in the app where they can see exactly what data is being collected and easily toggle permissions or ask for data deletion. Those are key privacy-enhancing features built in from the start.
Even simple things matter, right?
Totally. Even something simple, like a physical shutter on a camera lens that the user can manually close, demonstrates respect for privacy right there at the hardware level.
The source also highlights that there are significant long-term benefits to prioritizing privacy from the outset, not just for the user, but for the company itself. What are these advantages beyond just, avoiding fines?
Oh, the advantages are numerous, and they really contribute to sustainable business growth. Left we touched on with trust. Having a reputation for strong privacy practices is a major competitive differentiator in what's becoming a very crowded market. Users are increasingly privacy aware, and they will gravitate towards products they feel they can trust. Building privacy in from the start also reduces technical debt down the line. trying to retrofit security or privacy features onto a system not designed for them. That's often way more complex and expensive than getting it right from the beginning.
Makes sense.
It streamlines compliance efforts because your fundamental architecture is already aligned with regulatory requirements. Plus, it can actually reduce the amount of data a company has to manage and secure, which cuts down storage costs and minimizes the potential impact if a breach does happen.
So it's good business, basically.
Ultimately, yeah.
Yeah.
It positions the company as a responsible innovator, which strengthens brand loyalty, makes them more attractive to partners, investors. It moves privacy from being seen as just a cost or a barrier to being a core value proposition and actually a driver of business success.
As a listener, how can you potentially spot or identify if an IoT product you're considering buying likely uses these privacy by design principles? What should you be looking for?
Yeah, it's not always easy because marketing can sometimes be, well, misleading.
Sure.
But look beyond the buzzwords. Does the company's website have a clear, accessible privacy policy? Is it easy to read, not just full of legalese? Do they highlight specific privacy features as selling points, things like on-device processing, end-to-end encryption by default, a robust privacy dashboard?
What about the setup process?
Good point. During setup, are you giving granular choices about data collection? Or is it just one big agree-to-all button? Does the device or app provide clear visual indicators when data like video or audio is being recorded or transmitted? And doing a bit of research, looking for independent reviews from tech journalists or privacy advocates, can also give you valuable insights into how well a device actually lives up to its stated privacy promises. Look for companies that are transparent and empower you with choices.
This all sounds great, but honestly, doesn't building in all these privacy considerations from the very start slow down the development process? Doesn't it add complexity and potentially delay getting new products or features out to market?
That's a very common question, and yeah, certainly the initial investment in designing ethically can feel like it adds time or complexity. You have to think differently about architecture, maybe invest in specific privacy-enhancing technologies, spend time on the user experience for consent.
Right.
However, the argument, which is supported by the research's focus on benefits, is that while there might be an upfront cost, it ultimately leads to faster, more efficient, and less risky development cycles in the long run.
How so?
Well, avoiding major reworks because you fail to meet compliance, or dealing with the absolute chaos and cost from a security breach that's far more disruptive and expensive than investing up front.
Good point.
Plus, as we discussed, the constraints can actually foster innovative technical solutions that turn out to be ultimately more efficient or secure. So while it might feel like it slows things down initially, it's really an investment that accelerates sustainable innovation and reduces significant downstream costs and risks.
That's a powerful reframe. Shifting gears a bit, the source material then dives into some of the truly complex ethical dilemmas that arise specifically in the context of IoT data collection. It focuses on those difficult decisions developers face about what data to collect and, crucially, why they are collecting it.
Yeah, this is maybe the area requiring the most nuanced ethical judgment. Because IoT devices are embedded in our environment, they can potentially collect an enormous amount of data sensor readings, interaction logs, environmental data, location history, even biometric data.
Potential is huge.
The technical capability exists to collect almost anything. But the ethical question isn't, can we collect this data? It's, should we collect this data, and for what specific purpose? The source highlights this constant tension, this balancing act between the potential benefit to the user that might come from collecting more data. More personalized features, better performance predictions, automated actions, versus the significant potential for misuse of that same data.
Let's explore that balance. The source probes the question. When is data collection truly justified? What criteria should guide this decision-making process? Is it simply about enabling functionality, or is there like a higher ethical bar?
The material clearly suggests there is a higher ethical bar than just it makes the feature work slightly better.
Yeah.
Ethical justification for data collection should really be rooted in necessity and proportionality.
Let's name proportionality, okay.
Is this data collection strictly necessary to provide the core function of the device that the user expects and has chosen? Is the potential benefit to the user clear, tangible, and proportionate to the potential privacy risk and the sensitivity of the data being collected? Are there alternative technical approaches that require less data? The ethical decision isn't just a technical one. It requires a value judgment. It demands a focus on the user's best interest, minimizing data exposure, and collecting only what is truly essential for a clearly defined and user-benefiting purpose. It pushes back against that idea of collecting data simply because you can or because it might be useful later for some unknown purpose.
And tied directly to that is the critical importance of transparency, which the source strongly emphasizes. Transparency with users about exactly what data is being collected and how it's being used. What does good transparency actually look like in the context of IoT, where dense legal policies are so common?
Good transparency in IoT moves way beyond those legalistic terms of service hidden away on some website. It means providing information that is easily discoverable, written in clear, plain language that a non-expert can actually understand.
Plain language, yes, please.
Exactly. It means explaining what data is collected. Motion sensor data, ambient temperature, voice commands, whatever, why it's collected to trigger recording, adjust the thermostat, process your requests, how it is used for device functionality, analytics, personalization, and who it might be shared with, no one, cloud provider, third-party analytics.
Mm-hmm.
And crucially, this information should be presented to the user at relevant times, ideally during initial setup, within the settings menu of the companion app, or even via clear indicators on the device itself, like an LED light showing when audio is being processed. It's about making the invisible visible and understandable.
Empowering the user.
Exactly. Empowering the user to make informed decisions about their data based on clear information.
Okay, so once data collection is deemed ethically justified and necessary for a specific purpose, what strategies for using that collected data ethically does the source discuss? How can companies handle that data responsibly after they have it?
The material points to several strategies for responsible data handling post-collection. Key among these are techniques like anonymization and aggregation.
Okay, explain those a bit.
Anonymization involves stripping data of direct identifiers, names, account numbers, and potentially indirect identifiers, things that could be used to re-identify someone when combined with other info. Aggregation involves combining data from many users, so individual patterns get obscured. This allows for analysis of trends or system performance without exposing details about specific users.
Got it.
Limiting access to the collected data internally within the company is also vital. Data should only be accessible to people who specifically need it for the stated justified purpose, and that access should be logged and audited.
Right.
And critically, sticking strictly to the principle of purpose limitation, using the collected data only for the specific purpose the user was informed about and consented to. If you collected temperature data to optimize energy usage, you shouldn't just repurpose that data for targeted advertising without getting separate specific consent.
So, listener, the core question posed by the source about data collection really boils down to this. For the data your devices collect about you, is it clear why it's being collected? Do you feel the benefit you gain from the device's features or performance genuinely outweighs the potential privacy implications of that data being collected? It really brings into sharp focus that ethical gap between can collect and should collect.
Exactly, the technical capability to collect data. That's just the starting point. The ethical consideration requires a much deeper dive into the necessity, proportionality, transparency, and intended use of that data. It shifts the focus from what the technology enables to what responsible design demands.
And that ethical judgment about data collection flows directly into the challenging area of user consent, which the source addresses next. It acknowledges that getting truly effective, meaningful user consent in the IoT context is difficult because practices are so varied and, let's be honest, often deliberately confusing.
Yeah, that's a significant hurdle. We've all seen them privacy policies or consent requests that are pages long, written in dense legal jargon, or maybe designed with dark patterns that nudge you towards clicking agree without really understanding.
A dreaded wall of text.
Exactly. The goal, as the material outlines, must be to implement consent mechanisms that genuinely empower users. This means enabling them to make informed, free choices about their data based on a clear understanding of the implications, not just, getting them to click a box to move forward.
So, what are the best practices the source suggests for obtaining this kind of meaningful user consent, specifically for IoT devices and apps? What makes a consent process easily understandable and truly empowering for the user?
Well, best practices involve prioritizing clarity, granularity, and accessibility. Clarity means using simple, plain language, maybe visual aids, instead of complex legal text. Explain the what, why, and how in terms the average user can actually grasp.
Great.
Granularity is crucial. Instead of a single, all-encompassing, I agree to everything button, users should be given options to consent to specific types of data collection or specific uses. Maybe you agree to performance data, but opt out of data used for personalized recommendations, for example.
Okay, makes sense.
And accessibility means making consent easy to understand and easy to withdraw at any time. Don't hide the options deep within settings menus. Just in time, consent can be really effective in IoT too, asking for permission for a specific data access right when that feature is about to be used for the first time.
Like, this feature needs your location to work. Allow.
Exactly. That provides context right when it matters.
And the source really emphasizes the fundamental role of user education here. Consent is effectively meaningless if the user doesn't actually understand what they are agreeing to. How can companies effectively educate users about complex data practices in a way that's genuinely helpful?
Education is totally foundational to informed consent. It involves going beyond just presenting the consent options. Companies should integrate clear, concise explanations right into the setup process and the user interface itself.
How? Like pop-ups.
Could be interactive tutorials explaining data permissions, using simple icons to represent different data types or uses, providing easily accessible info within the app about how data is used and managed. Some companies create dedicated privacy centers on their websites with FAQs, maybe videos, explaining their practices in user-friendly terms.
Mm-hmm.
It's really about actively helping the user understand that value exchange of what data is needed and what benefit they get in return, and making the privacy implications crystal clear.
Based on the source's discussion, can you give some tangible examples of what effective consent mechanisms might look like in real-world IoT applications?
Sure. Think about a smart home device setup process that uses a step-by-step flow. It explains each data permission request individually on its own screen with simple text and clear visuals rather than just dumping everything into one long document you scroll through.
Okay.
Or a mobile app for a wearable device might have a dedicated data and privacy dashboard.
Mm.
It clearly lists every type of data collected, heart rate, location, activity, sleep, and lets the user toggle consent for specific uses, like using activity data for personalized coaching versus contributing aggregated data for research.
Right, giving choice.
Exactly. Another example could be a smart appliance. When a new data-intensive feature is activated, it prompts the user at that moment with a simple explanation and consent request just for that feature. This smart diagnostic feature needs to send usage data to the manufacturer to predict maintenance needs. Allow.
Okay.
These approaches move away from that overwhelming legalistic consent model towards context-aware, digestible, and actionable user choices.
I have to admit, as a listener, how often do you really read or truly understand those complex consent requests on new devices or apps? It's so easy to just click agree. What would honestly make it easier for you to feel informed and in control? That's really the challenge the source is putting to the companies building these devices.
And that feeling of overwhelm you mentioned highlights exactly the problem the source points out.
Mm-hmm.
The burden shouldn't be entirely on the user to decipher complex legal documents.
Mm.
Companies need to prioritize user experience design specifically for privacy and consent.
Mm-hmm.
It requires empathy, a genuine commitment to clear communication. Making it easier for you would involve shorter, simpler explanations, clear summaries, options presented visually, and the ability to easily manage preferences after the initial setup. It requires designing for understanding and control, not just for compliance.
Moving on to a slightly different but related area, the source material also explores the potential role of artificial intelligence in promoting ethical IoT. It shifts the perspective from viewing AI solely as a technology that requires vast amounts of data and thus poses privacy risks,
Right, the typical view.
to seeing how AI could actually be used to enhance privacy and security in IoT systems.
That's a crucial shift in perspective, yeah. AI, like any powerful technology, has potential for both harm and good when it comes to privacy. The source suggests that AI algorithms, when they're designed and applied ethically, can actually be powerful tools for managing and analyzing the sheer volume of IoT data in ways that protect privacy more effectively than traditional methods.
How specifically can AI help with more ethical data management?
Well, AI can be employed to automate processes that are critical for handling data ethically at scale. For example, AI could analyze incoming data streams from billions of devices to automatically identify and flag sensitive personal information that needs special handling or immediate anonymization.
Okay.
It could help enforce data retention policies by identifying data that's reached the end of its necessary life cycle and should be automatically deleted or archived securely. AI could also monitor data access patterns internally, flagging unusual activity that might indicate potential misuse or unauthorized access, thus improving internal accountability.
The source mentions AI's potential for data anonymization. Can you elaborate on that? How can AI algorithms help protect user identities within these huge IoT data sets?
Sure. Traditional anonymization techniques can sometimes be vulnerable to re-identification attempts, especially with complex, interconnected data from multiple devices. AI, particularly techniques in areas like differential privacy or synthetic data generation, offers more robust methods.
Differential privacy. How does that work?
Differential privacy involves adding precisely calculated noise to datasets or query results. AI algorithms can help figure out the optimal level of noise to add enough to make it statistically impossible to re-identify individuals from the output, but little enough so you can still get meaningful analysis from the aggregate data.
Interesting.
Machine learning models can also be trained to identify subtle quasi-identifiers, those pieces of data that aren't directly identifying on their own, but when combined, can pinpoint an individual and help remove or tweak them effectively. AI can essentially make anonymization more sophisticated and harder to reverse.
There's also the complex relationship between predictive analytics, often powered by AI and IoT, like predicting when you'll need milk from smart fridge data, or a health issue from wearable data and user consent. If a system predicts behavior based on collected data, does that prediction itself need a new layer of consent? And how could AI potentially help manage consent for these predictive uses?
This is really a frontier area in IoT ethics. If a device collects data and an AI analyzes it to predict something potentially sensitive about, you say, inferring your political views from smart speaker requests or predicting a health condition from biometric data, that inference or prediction wasn't the original data point you explicitly provided.
Right, it's derived data.
Exactly. The source suggests AI could potentially be part of the solution for managing consent in this tricky scenario. AI could potentially be used to analyze the sensitivity of an inference being made. If it crosses a certain threshold, it could automatically trigger a just-in-time consent request to the user. We've inferred X based on your data. Do you consent to us using this inference for purpose Y? AI could help automate identifying sensitive inferences and the follow-up consent workflow, presenting users with clear explanations of the prediction and offering granular choices about its use. It's a way AI could potentially make consent systems more dynamic and context-aware.
And AI can also play a role in enhancing the fundamental security of IoT devices and networks, which in turn is crucial for protecting privacy by preventing breaches in the first place.
Absolutely. A major threat to privacy in IoT is simply inadequate security leading to data breaches or unauthorized access. AI can be a powerful tool in bolstering that security.
Oh.
Machine learning algorithms can analyze network traffic patterns or device behavior logs to detect anomalies, things that might indicate a cyber attack, malware infection, unauthorized intrusion much faster than manual analysis or traditional rule-based systems. AI can help predict potential vulnerabilities based on historical data, or identify devices on a network that might be compromised. By improving the overall security posture of the whole IoT ecosystem, AI indirectly but very effectively protects user privacy by making it harder for malicious actors to get their hands on sensitive data.
So it sounds like AI isn't just the data-hungry beast we sometimes fear. The source suggests it could potentially be, I don't know, a guardian of your privacy. How might this actually manifest in some of the devices a listener might own?
Yeah, think about your smart speaker again. While the voice processing involves AI, a privacy-focused design might use AI on the device to continuously listen only for the wake word,
Okay.
processing the rest of the audio locally and immediately discarding it until that wake word is detected. The AI's job there is actually to filter the data and protect your privacy by making sure only relevant commands are processed further.
Interesting. Other examples?
In a smart home hub, AI could monitor all the network activity of connected devices, learning normal patterns. It could use that knowledge to flag any device exhibiting unusual behavior, like trying to send large amounts of data to some unknown server, alerting you to a potential security or privacy risk. In a modern car, AI-powered systems might analyze driving data locally to provide personalized safety tips without sending granular location or driving style data off the device unless you explicitly opt in. The potential is definitely there for AI to be designed and used specifically to minimize data collection, enhance security, and automate privacy-preserving actions.
But given the power of AI, doesn't using it on private data still feel inherently risky to some degree?
That's a very valid point, and it really comes back to the ethical design aspect. As with any powerful technology, the risks of AI are tied directly to its implementation and the intent behind it.
Right, intent matters.
Hugely. Is the AI system itself transparent in how it uses data? Are its algorithms auditable for bias or unintended privacy leaks? Is the training data for the AI handled ethically? If the AI is designed with ethical principles and privacy by design as core requirements, if its purpose is genuinely to enhance privacy or security, then it can be a valuable tool.
But if not?
If it's designed primarily to extract maximum data value or make sensitive inferences without controls or transparency, then yeah, the risks are substantial. The responsibility lies squarely with the developers and managers to ensure the AI is built and deployed ethically, always prioritizing user protection.
To make all these concepts more tangible, the source material suggests looking at real-world case studies, examples of companies or implementations that seem to be getting it right when it comes to ethical IoT practices, learning from successful approaches.
Yeah, it's incredibly valuable to see that these principles aren't just theory, they are being put into practice. While the specific source material we review doesn't actually call out companies by name, it emphasizes the value of examining successful examples. Based on the principles we've discussed, exemplary companies in the IoT space would be those that consistently demonstrate a strong commitment to privacy and ethical data handling across their product lines.
So thinking about the types of practices that would make a company stand out as getting it right, based on everything we've discussed so far, what would those look like? What are they doing?
Well, they'd be companies known for implementing end-to-end encryption by default, making sure data is protected from the moment it leaves the device all the way to its destination, and also when it's stored.
Okay, strong encryption.
They would offer privacy policies that are not only easy to find, but are also maybe accompanied by user-friendly summaries or interactive guides. They provide users with robust, easily accessible privacy dashboards in their apps on their web portals, allowing that granular control over data collection and usage, including the ability to easily download or delete their data. These companies would be actively exploring and implementing technologies like on-device processing to minimize sending sensitive data to the cloud. They'd make privacy settings default to the most conservative options. Their whole design philosophy would clearly communicate respect for user autonomy and data control.
So basically embodying privacy by design and transparency.
Exactly. In tangible product features and policies.
The source also briefly mentions learning from ethical failures in the industry. Without naming specific companies or incidents, what are the common threads or lessons learned from cases where privacy was compromised or ethical lines were crossed based on the themes we've covered?
Yeah, ethical failures often stem from a fundamental deprioritization of privacy and security during the design and development phases. It seems obvious, but it happens.
How does that show up?
It could manifest as just inadequate security measures, making devices vulnerable to hacking things like default weak passwords or unencrypted data transmission. It could involve collecting far, far more data than is actually necessary for a product's core function, often with an eye towards some future unspecified monetization or analysis.
The collect now, figure out later approach.
Exactly. Failures frequently involve a lack of transparency with users about what data is collected and how it's used, often buried deep in opaque terms of service. Poor or deceptive consent mechanisms that trick users into agreeing to broad data sharing are also common culprits. The lessons learned from these failures consistently highlight the severe financial, legal, and reputational damage that results from eroding user trust and neglecting those ethical responsibilities. They really underscore that privacy and security vulnerabilities aren't just technical flaws. They are ethical failures with significant real-world consequences for individuals.
So the strategies that lead to those successful ethical outcomes are essentially reinforcing and applying the best practices we discussed earlier, using these examples to show they are achievable.
Precisely. Success in ethical IoT comes from consistently applying principles like privacy by design, prioritizing transparency and clear communication, implementing truly empowering consent mechanisms, ensuring robust security throughout the system lifecycle, and fostering a company culture where ethical considerations are treated as seriously as functionality or time to market. The case studies, whether they're successful examples or cautionary tales, provide concrete evidence of the impact of these choices.
These examples make it clear that building ethical IoT is possible. It's not just theoretical. For you, the listener, how can you proactively support companies that seem to prioritize ethics based on these ideas? Or what should you look for when deciding which connected products to bring into your life?
Look for companies that are proactive and transparent about privacy. Visit their website, look for dedicated privacy pages, clearly written privacy policies. When you're setting up a device or app, pay close attention to the consent process. Is it clear? Are you given choices? Do they offer features like local data processing options or physical privacy controls?
Do your homework.
Yeah, read reviews, look for discussions specifically about security and privacy performance, not just the cool features. Supporting companies that invest in these areas sends a crucial market signal that consumers value ethical practices. It actually incentivizes the entire industry to follow suit.
I'm curious, stepping back a bit, does adopting this ethical approach, building in privacy and security from the very start, inherently make products more expensive for consumers? Does that cost get passed on?
Well, while there might be an initial investment by companies in designing more complex systems or using more sophisticated privacy-enhancing technologies, the research really suggests the long-term view is different. Ethical practices, while potentially adding some upfront cost, are ultimately an investment that leads to greater efficiency, reduced risk, and increased trust, which supports sustainable business growth.
So it pays off in the end.
Companies that build ethically are less likely to face costly breaches, regulatory fines, or lose customers due to privacy concerns. These avoided costs and the strengthened market position can offset or even outweigh that initial investment. So while ethical design might sometimes influence product cost, it often represents a better overall value proposition for both the company and the consumer in the long run. You get more reliable, secure, trustworthy products.
It's a shift from thinking about the cheapest way to build something.
You're thinking about the most responsible way.
Exactly. Wow, okay. We've really taken a deep dive into the source material and pulled out some vital points. To recap the key takeaways from The Ethics of IoT, Balancing Innovation and Privacy.
First, the immense scale of connected devices and the sheer volume of data generated makes ethical considerations, particularly privacy, an urgent and central challenge for the entire industry. No getting around it.
And understanding regulations like GDPR and CCPA isn't just about legal compliance. These frameworks are powerful forces that can actually inspire and drive ethical innovation in product design.
Third, implementing privacy by design, integrating privacy considerations into every stage of development from the outset, is crucial for building trust, reducing risk, and achieving long-term business success. It's foundational.
We explored the ethical dilemmas of data collection itself, emphasizing that companies must carefully justify what data they collect and why, coupled with absolute transparency towards the user. No hiding the ball.
Non-negotiable is the need for effective, understandable user consent mechanisms that truly empower individuals to make informed choices about their data, moving beyond confusing legal jargon and dark patterns.
And reframing our view of AI, recognizing that it's not just a data risk, but can be a powerful tool specifically deployed to enhance privacy and security through techniques like advanced anonymization and threat detection.
Finally, learning from both the successes and failures of companies in this space provides essential, actionable insights for anyone involved in developing, managing, or even just using IoT technologies ethically.
Right.
The source material concludes by reinforcing that navigating the complex ethics of IoT requires close collaboration between technical teams and management. Prioritizing privacy and ethical considerations isn't just a compliance burden, it's essential for fostering user trust and driving responsible innovation that benefits everyone.
Absolutely. It's about protecting users, building a stronger reputation for organizations, and fostering sustainable growth in this rapidly expanding market. It's not just the right thing to do ethically, it's increasingly becoming smart business strategy. This leaves you with a lot to think about as more and more devices connect and potentially collect more intimate details of your life. Given how rapidly IoT capabilities are evolving and integrating into our homes, our health, our very presence in the world, what level of ethical oversight should we as users and as a society be actively demanding from the companies building these technologies?
That's a big question.
And how can we ensure that this oversight mechanism, whether it's regulatory, industry-led, or consumer-driven, actually manages to keep pace with the relentless speed of innovation itself?
That dynamic between innovation and oversight is arguably the defining challenge for the future of trustworthy technology. It demands continuous engagement, not just from developers and regulators, but really from all of us who use and are impacted by these devices every single day.
A profound question to consider as we wrap up this deep dive. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It was a great discussion.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.